I landed in pre-market almost by mistake, simply because I was up that early and I found the strategy. I closed in on it fairly quickly and saw how we could create.
Wow, this number really blows my mind. Over 75% of you who watch the show regularly are not subscribed. If you enjoy the show and want to support us, the easiest and also free way is just to hit that subscribe button. This will help us find new and better guests, and I promise you to continue to work at making this show better and bringing you more value. Welcome back, everybody, to Be the Trader. Today is going to be a great day because we're here in Dallas and I have my friend Sandra here, who is a pre-market long bias trader. That's right, pre-market, which blows my mind. It probably does yours too, because a lot of people typically say pre-market is dangerous. But I brought Sandra here to share her story and how she even got involved in trading. Sandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So could you share with us what got you into this world of trading to begin with?
It all started during COVID, I think, as for so many other traders, where I was stuck at home. But I previously worked in events, in protocol, in government relations. So I really had nothing to do because in that job you can't really work from home. So it completely slowed down. And I still remember I was watching Fox Business all day long. And after 2 weeks, I said to my husband, there's a huge opportunity in the stock market. And that's how I got started. And I started with large caps, and I just bought stocks that completely dived down. There was nothing fundamentally wrong with them, maybe just bad news, bad earnings report. Bought them on the dip, and then I made 10% on the way back up and sold them. And sold them also very quickly when I incurred a loss. And that's how I got started, and I got the trading bug.
And so that sounds like more on the edge of like buy and hold kind of, or like a swings
Correct.
trading?
Yeah, for a few days.
Right, and then now, how'd you end up involved into the active day trading space? Like after that happens, what happens next?
I think I was just looking for more volatility because I got a little bit bored with this. I'm not the perfect swing trader where I want to be a little bit more in action. So I did that for a while. It really worked. It really worked well. And I just saw on the sidelines all these like small caps that went up 200%. I'm like, wait a minute, why don't I like trade more over there?
Right.
And that's really how I got interested in it.
And so you get into small caps, you see them all moving. Was it like, did you already have somewhat of like a skill base or like strategy when you were trading before you went to small caps? And if so, did you bring that over? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, so I brought my same strategy with me, and I still adhere to that today, where I take gains at 10, 20%, and I cut losses at 5%. And for me, that makes a lot of sense. But to your point, it's obviously very different style of trading. And what I really didn't consider, naively so, are just the risk associated with that volatility. And I wasn't really equipped to handle those from a psychological standpoint. So I had a very hard time at the beginning cutting losses because I had this hold and hope and all these challenges that we still associate with that.
Give me an example. Like, what do you mean by you weren't ready for the volatility and you were holding and hoping? What do you mean by that?
I think I wasn't ready for the pace, and especially during COVID, because we had the morning dip, and that's what I bought, and then they went up 200%, right? I mean, it was just like almost the norm. And then I also traded the OTC market, and that's for me something that I just couldn't handle it. I can't handle the volatility on the way up, but definitely not on the way down. I didn't have the risk management skills to just like cut my losses in time.
So help me understand then, because based on what you're telling me, it sounds like, you start trading during COVID, and, you made some good swing investments or swing trades, if you will. You close those for profits, and you go into day trading. It almost sounds like, where does the learning begin? Where does the education begin? When do you start to build a process? When do you start, how does that start to unfold, and when does that start to happen?
I think one of the downsides of my trading was that I had a career, I had money, I was older.
Yeah.
I'd had money to play around with it. So a lot of times I just refunded, my account. So I did good profits with my swing trading. And when it came to day trading, I had the account, but not the knowledge in my account. So I was really, really excited about it. I found the love for trading, but I really needed to build up my knowledge account. And so I think I did that at the same time. I was not somebody who studied for a year or 2 years and then really started to try out with small amounts. I basically went full in. And with full in, I don't mean with necessarily large sums of money, but I was never somebody who paper traded. I learned by doing.
By now, you know our show is sponsored by Cobra Trading. I use them every day and for good reason. I love the fast execution and the great customer service. And it's not just me saying this. Both Benzinga and Forbes Advisor awarded Cobra Trading best-in-class ratings in multiple categories for day traders. You can sign up now with the Be The Trader link below, and Cobra will give you 100 days of free commission, 3 months of free software, and 33% off commission for life. I know you'll be as happy as I am when you trade with Cobra. Now let's get back to the show. Okay, so now I'm curious, like when you're learning by doing, when did you start to kind of like, okay, I either A, need to stop doing this, or B, I need to, I picked up this book and started learning this while I was applying. Like, how did it start to make sense for you? Like, when did you have to change habits for it to start to work, or what happened?
Yeah, fairly quickly. I mean, I understood basically right away. I mean, it took me like a week or 2 weeks to see that what I was thinking I would be doing wasn't really working that well. And that I needed more education. I needed more trading psychology first and foremost. So I really scaled that back. I scaled back my trading amounts. I didn't invest. I didn't play with that much money. And so that came fairly quick, I think. And then I just started build on my skills. I started to study patterns that work for that type of day trading. I looked at different time frames when I could trade, when these patterns worked out. And I have to say, I also developed this obsession. I just did nothing else. I was in front of the screens, not necessarily trading, watching webinars, investing in my education, trying out different services, reading trading psychology books. I was really busy with that stuff 12 to 14 hours a day. And at that time, we were all home. My daughter was in school. So I did have the time to do that at that point. And it was just my entire focus.
How long would you say it took you to find your pre-market strategy and find something that was consistent for the day trading side?
I think I landed in pre-market almost by mistake, simply because I was up that early. And so I gravitated towards things that were going on at the market at the time, and that obviously is pre-market. And I live at the East Coast, so that worked very well. And it took me, I would say, a year probably to land on pre-market, to see that that's something that I really like. I like the pace. For me, and I know that sounds odd, but for me it's much cleaner almost than regular trading hours. I've found other people that trade pre-market. And then from there, I have a very good trading buddy in Germany. His name is Klaus. And we just started brainstorming together. And after a while, we saw the same patterns over and over and over again in pre-market. And from then on, it was simply just data tracking. And I found this strategy. I closed in on it fairly quickly and did nothing else after that. Just saw how we could create an edge in that particular strategy.
So you find the strategy pre-market and you start tracking it. Can you give people an idea of like how you started tracking this, and how long did you track it for before you started executing on it and only executing on that strategy itself?
We tracked several months, and we basically tracked in Excel. So we tracked the tickers, the float rotation, the time of the day, when did the pattern first come, when did we see the pattern work. So we really looked at it in depth. So I tracked all my trades. Klaus traded he's obviously in a different time zone. So I did a little bit more sometimes the pre-market trading, sometimes he did. He's an engineer by trade, so he did a lot of the tracking, really inputting it into Excel and sorting it out and filtering. He's much better at this than I am. I'm a little bit more the visual person, so what I did, I took screenshots from all the trades after the fact, and that's how. And then we circled different areas of the charts. When is what happening? What indicators can we underlie to this pattern? So maybe that makes sense. So in pre-market, the fib retracements. So we started playing around with those. And just by looking at this continuously, we came up with a way to trade them with a repeatable pattern.
Now, for people watching this, they're probably hearing you explain your story, and it sounds like it's like that. It does. So I'm curious on was there any challenges for you? Like, what was your biggest challenge, if there was, during that time of you developing the strategy and with Klaus and then executing the strategy? Was it just like, we found the strategy, this is amazing, execute, money's all in my bank? Like, was it like that, or was there challenges along the way after you started implementing?
Yeah, no, it wasn't like that at all. And I've been trading since November 2020. But don't forget, I put all my time and resources into this. For me, this was never like a side gig. As I said, from the beginning on until today, I really focused solely on that. And at the beginning, I still had a job. I was working part-time. I continued to do so, but then again, it was COVID. So, and in my field, unfortunately, there was not that much to do. So I really could dedicate the weekends, for example. I did 12 hours each weekend. And if I wasn't sitting in my computer, if I had to drive my daughter to school, I had an audiobook in the car. So I really tried to find any spare time that I had to dedicate to my trading education. So I think I also made a faster leap because my entire focus went on this endeavor. Were there challenges? Countless. Like any other trader. I think what played into my benefit is that I was just never simply interested in copying somebody else's pattern. Not because they're not good, they might be better than mine.
Sure.
But I knew deep down that I couldn't execute them because I tried it before. I looked at all the successful traders. I never really understood exactly what they were doing because I was trying to, but it never worked really in my favor.
Yeah.
So I knew that there was something else that they were doing. And I think they could only derive to these conclusions because they tracked it themselves. And then it makes sense, right? If you like track your own patterns, if you look at your own patterns. So I figured out, I think fairly quickly, that that's what I have to do and come up with my own thing. So I didn't waste a lot of time to see what X is doing, what Y is doing.
Yep.
I was like, how can I make this work for myself?
And what's interesting in what you're saying is, like, you did tons of studying, books, webinars, videos, and yet you come back to the conclusion of, I'm going to develop my own because I tried all this and it's not working. Do you feel like all of that was wasted time in terms of studying all those other people's strategies and so forth?
No, absolutely not, because I think I borrowed a lot from other people, not copying, but and I think we all do. You borrow from their ideas. For example, the morning dip buy, that wasn't invented by me. The fib retracement, that's not my idea.
Right.
So I just looked at the RSI. That's, everybody, like, it's a common indicator.
Right.
So I just tried how they work in my trading time zone. What indicators work? What can I use in my favor? And the good thing is, after that I developed with Klaus that pattern, then I came to actually the bigger hurdle for me. It's how to maintain that mindset that I can execute these trades. Because I think it's one thing having a good pattern, having a repeatable pattern, but also being able to execute that. And I fairly quickly shifted my attention then to trading psychology and how can I execute these trades? How do I combat FOMO, or how can I cut losses quickly? Because that was my bigger challenge. Tracking data, finding that pattern, for me that was the easier part, because as I said, I'm very visual. I could see things after some time.
Yep.
But for me it was the trading psychology. I'm very stubborn.
Yep.
I had a good career. I usually understand things. I was like, why can't I understand this? Like, this is a perfect pattern. So why doesn't the ticker come back? You know, and it was hard for me to see that it's a different animal, that we trade with probabilities, that nobody has 100% win rate. For me, it's like 60-70%. That means 30 times I lose. How do I make sure that these 30% of losing trades don't rule my entire trading?
Right. I like that you mentioned something earlier. You said, we found the strategy, you and Klaus, and then you ran into something different. It sounded like the way you positioned it is like that's when you ran into the difficulty for yourself of the mindset, and you really wanted to focus on your mental game. Did Klaus have that issue, and that's what made you understand, like, oh, why he's making it, we have the same strategy, I need to dive this way to correct it? Did you see that difference between you two? Just curious.
Yeah, Klaus is a little bit, I'd say he doesn't have the same emotions than I do.
Yep.
He doesn't care as much. He cuts very quickly.
Yep.
And he also doesn't have that much time to trade because he still has a full-time job. So for me, I was there. I was ready. I could take these trades. I'm in the correct time zone. A lot of times I was also, when I see the pattern, I'm in. I don't care what happens around me. I'm just like trading. I'm fully focused. And I think that can be an advantage because I take many more trades.
Right.
Whereas somebody who's maybe a little bit more cautious, who's looking for it to be just perfect, would wait sometimes a little bit more. I just have I'd say a little bit higher rotation. With that comes also more risk, right?
Yep, yep.
So I think Klaus most of the time has a cleaner execution, but therefore fewer trades.
Yep.
I have higher executions, maybe sometimes higher gains, but I also carry more risk.
So going into the mental aspect, what was the first thing you focused on to help you improve on your execution? Because you find the golden goose for yourself, right? Everyone is looking for that. They find it, because I'm sure there's someone who has found that for themselves. But they're like, man, I know this works. I see it every day. And I know what I should do, but I'm running into challenges. So how did you start solving your mental game?
I think sometimes, and I know that sounds counterproductive, but not taking it too serious. Because I think that doesn't mean I'm careless, but I think especially dealing with money, it's a different animal. And for me, and there are a lot of reasons for it, but I was really afraid of losses. I don't think I could lose because now this had become my full-time job. I have a family.
Yep.
I just the idea of losing money was very difficult for me to accept. So I had to kind of rewire myself and make this a normal part of trading. We just have to, it's part of the game, and if you don't like it, you have to get out. And I didn't want to get out. So for me, I really had to cope with losses. How can I do that? How can I stay, especially in pre-market when there is no hard stop? So I have to do these mental stops, which doesn't make it easier. That was a big part of it.
What did you do to improve that part? The aspect of being able to accept all these losses, like going through that process, like what helped you with that? Since you mentioned that was a big part, challenging for yourself.
So I don't focus on losses because I felt the more I focus on losses, the more fear I have of losses, the more I attract losses. So I focus on winning, and I focus on certain amounts I want to make during that day. For me, it was just an easy calculation. I want to make $1,000 a day. Well, I don't get to $1,000 a day when I lose 800, right? So I was just like, I had my goal on winning. And the losses, this is just a profitable loss. Tim Grattani once said, the cost of cutting losses is the cheaper option. And that stuck with me. I thought that was genius what he said. And that is true. And so every time I occurred a loss, I thought about what he said. And I was like, this is going to be my cheaper option. Even if they come back, and they do that, especially in pre-market, they do that all the time.
Right.
I just cut at my 5% or like maybe 8% with some slippage. Next thing you know, it spikes 30%. But overall, it's the cheaper option. And I read Mark Douglas a lot, and I thought a lot about probabilities. And I will win in the long run with my win rate. So if I just cut my losses, if I stick to the plan, my win rate is 60, 70%.
Yep.
I make 10, 20%, I cut at 5%, it's a no-brainer. So I'm just trying to be realistic about it and try to take my emotions out as much as I can.
Speaking of the percentage and the probabilities, could you just elaborate on how, was it challenging for you to understand, like to live the probability way?
No, I loved that.
Okay.
Then the minute I got that, and I had the Divergent Trader, he talks a lot about the mental aspect of trading. And he had that example of a coin toss. And I actually tried it out at home. And I flipped a coin 100 times, and it's really 50-50. So once I got that, the light bulb went on. And I think what is difficult for us traders is that the probabilities obviously don't come in a sequence.
Right.
So we might have 5 losses and then 5 wins. And I think that perspective is important to keep. Still, for me, I struggle sometimes with it, especially when you're in a losing streak. It's like, when do I pick up trading it? But if you just think about the probabilities, the coin flip, it's actually easy math. We make it much more complicated, I think, than it actually is.
When it comes to pre-market, because at the beginning, people are probably like, why are we not diving into that? Because she trades pre-market. So I want to know, if someone is interested in pre-market, what are some like things they should be aware of that they, maybe they're a new trader and they're just not aware of, whether it's risk, whether it's how the momentum is, or anything that you recommend when it comes to studying pre-market?
I think pre-market, obviously, it's very fast moving. I think if I would be a completely new trader, I think I would study the basics first before I start playing around in pre-market. I look at the float a lot, just based on the volatility. And I think in pre-market, you need defined patterns, especially when you're in pre-market and the news hit. Let's say I play the news as well. I like the news that hit at 4 a.m. So the time I sit down at the computer, usually at 7, it has retraced already. When the news hit and I sit in front of the computer, I think a lot of people get FOMO, especially in pre-market, because the moves are so quick and so dramatic. You know that you have to sit back. That's not the time, at least for me, that's not the time to jump into a trade. You have to really monitor what's happening in pre-market, and I think you have to be very risk averse too, because they can go up very quick, but trust me, they also come down very quick. I think without a strategy, without a thought process, without a more deeper knowledge, a pre-market can get tricky.
Do you have some things that you need to see at least pre-market before you even consider trading a ticker that is pre-market? Because, there's a lot of stocks that are moving, and they could have. I don't want to fill it for you, but they could have like less volume or something. So I'm just curious, like, is there certain limitations or criteria that you must have to even pay attention to a pre-market trade?
Yeah, I look at the overall market. In a strong market, I'm a little bit more lenient. In a slow market, I'm a little bit more cautious. I like everything 70% and up. And I just look at the highest percentage tickers of the day. I don't like sub-dollar plays. So I usually like to focus $1 to $10, sometimes even $20, if they occur. And I like trading volume. I look at $1 million and above. I like a low float. So yeah, there's definitely criteria. I focused a lot on the news. So where good news is, I know for biotechs, it might be that they got an approval or certain news. I found that really, because I just trade the technical, sometimes even the most unimportant news, so to say. Somebody released a press statement. I mean, that's not great news, right? But sometimes everything with AI, for example, at some point, the stock spiked. So the news I'm not too focused on. I like them to have some sort of news and it just not be a spike out of nowhere.
What would you tell someone if they want to start trading pre-market just in general and they want to develop a strategy for the pre-market? Is there any steps that you can reveal in terms of the steps that you took to like develop the actual strategy itself? Like, I'm very curious, like, I know you mentioned earlier, you track float, you had Klaus track market cap, but I know you are visual. So I know there's a lot of people who are visual too. And so like, why did you take snapshots? And was it only the pre-market snapshot? Was it like the whole picture of the pre-market and after and during the open hours to see what happened after the fact? Did you even care about that? Did you care about the after hours of the previous day? Did that impact the pre-market? So I'm very curious, like, how did you track that and why, like, were you taking snapshots of whatever you were taking of?
Yeah, I scaled in since then, but at the beginning when I started tracking it, I just looked when the news hit. So, I mean, when did the spike occur? And I tracked from that point of view. And after I did it over and over again, you see the same pattern repeating over and over again, right? Because a lot of times, I mean, what we like to see, I think all of us, if they peak at one point, let's say at $5, they retrace, and then they come back to $5. And then maybe they go even higher, or maybe that's the time when they go back down. What happens during that time? When do they actually go back up? I just visually looked at that. When does it happen? And then why does it happen at that point? For example, it happens a lot of time at 7 a.m., at certain hours of the day. And just like keep tracking. And you will see, I think, at least it was like that for me, that there are some patterns that you will be seeing, some consolidation phases and so on.
I like that you mentioned earlier, because you brought up Klaus a couple of times, because he has you mentioned engineering background. Do you feel like anyone who, let's say, is like yourself, and I'm similar where I'm just visual, do you think if it was just visual only, you could figure it out? Or do you feel like if someone is like yourself, they should find someone to help them do the other side of the puzzle to make it faster? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, a big supporter of outsourcing work. When I started trading, the first thing that came to my mind is I'm not good with computers. I'm not good with Excel. I don't enjoy it either. So I needed to find people who can do that. I hired someone in Brazil to create a trading journal for me.
Yep.
It's perfect. It's perfection. It has everything in there.
Yeah.
I could have never done that, but I found somebody who could do it. And I think that was the case with me and Klaus, as you rightfully mentioned. So I'm the visual part, he's the data tracking part.
Yep.
And I think that is important. And I think we also, in trading, it should still be enjoyable, right? Because you can only excel at something that you enjoy.
Yeah.
So if there are parts of trading that you don't enjoy, for me it was like Excel data trading, then find a partner to do that and divide up the work. I think without Klaus I couldn't have done it. And Klaus is very good. I go to him a lot of times and I say, hey, I see this pattern. How far can a stock, for example, in our pattern, go down so that the pattern is broken, completely broken? There's no chance for recovery. And he can give me those numbers. Like he can say, for example, if it goes below, I don't know, 20% of our entry point, it's just done. It will never recover. And that's like 90% of the time. It's just an example.
Yeah,
so he has these things that he can spit out back to me. I could not do it without him. Klaus, as I said, he lives in Germany. He can't be live in the market a lot of times because he's still working. So I'm in the chat rooms. I know the US traders. I have a network here, thankfully. So I have a lot of resources that Klaus has no access to.
Right.
And so I think we really work well together. And I think that's, I would advise it to other traders. Find some help. Find other people that can really pitch in and make you successful.
In the beginning, when you were talking about all the studying you were doing, and then you have your own strategy now, is there any pillars that you feel like are very important that you carried, that you found that all traders seem to have?
I think willpower, first of all, coupled with enthusiasm. They all have such a strong willpower and they come back time after time after time. And even myself. And I was defeated so many times where I wanted to give up trading. And it hurt me so much. I had sleepless nights. I could not get up in the morning because I was so hurt from trading losses. And for me, it just helped that people were openly talking about that this is, I wouldn't say it's normal, nobody wants that, but this is happening.
Yep.
Trading is a very, very tough business. And the people who are now trading well, they paid the price. That's all it is. They studied, they worked very hard, they went through all these mental challenges, and they overcame it. For some people, I think it's more difficult than for others, but we all have to do the work. And that's what I see in these really successful traders. And that's why I always love to talk to people who are very successful at trading. I don't want to know their strategies.
Right.
I want to know how they tick. Like how do they think? And I think they have that in common. Willpower, enthusiasm, consistency, persistence, and a love for trading.
I'm curious on the idea of, obviously, I'm a man, you're a woman, right? And I'm very curious on if you feel like, just your thoughts on women in our industry, because I'm always looking for new women traders. And I don't know if you have a network or if you have experience with meeting a lot of them. And if you do, like if you have your own opinion on, one of the biggest things that people are always saying is like, maybe women could be better traders than men traders. So I'm just very curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to box it up like that.
Yeah.
But so when I started trading, for me, Mari was an inspiration because she was the first female trader who hit $1 million. I admire her a lot. And I met her once and I very briefly talked to her, but I always admired her discipline and her mindset. That's something that I wanted to do as well. In the wolf pack where I'm active, we have like a little group, they're lady wolves.
Yeah.
I love to interact with them. So I do really enjoy female traders. Obviously, I enjoy networking with them. as you rightfully said too, it's very male dominated. For me, that it never really bothered me. What I really liked about trading, or the stock market in general, is that it is accessible for everyone, right? There are no categories. It doesn't, like in the regular workplace, in the corporate world, right? We don't have this in the stock market. It doesn't matter how old you are, how you look like, if you're a man or a woman. The only thing that counts is how you execute your trades. And that's what actually drew me to the stock market. So in that sense, it really doesn't bother me. And all the traders that I have met, they were wonderful. I have not met one trader that came up with stereotypes or was wondering why I'm there. Maybe sometimes I felt like that, but nobody ever made me feel that way. So I think it's encouraging that more and more female traders are there. I think especially for female traders, it's just a great opportunity to really maybe have a side income. I wish then I was a single mom for a long time. I wish I would have discovered trading earlier so that I could have maybe a few hours per day, which I did have, which everybody has, right, at night to study or maybe do something else outside.
So speaking of that perspective, because that is unique on this show, is you have that perspective of being a mother and being at a time in your life where you didn't know trading at the time, but you know that, man, I would have wished I would have dived into something like this earlier in life. For those who are watching who might be a stay-at-home mom, they really want to get something else going, what would you tell them to get, what advice would you give them to get started, and how can they get started?
I think what really helped me is like networking. I thrive in meeting other people. I think that's a good start. But first and foremost, education. I would say start with trading psychology, start with like learning about trading. There's
Any
so
specific
much.
books or anything? Just
Mark Douglas, Trading in the Zone.
Yep.
For mindset, I study Bob Proctor quite a bit.
Okay.
Change your paradigm, change your life, and a lot of free YouTube content. That's why I'm actually so grateful to be on the show, because I'm so grateful to you and to all these other traders who put their content out on YouTube, because I watched that nonstop. And everybody was so gracious with their time, with their talent, with sharing their experiences. And I think if you want to, it's endless, the information that you really can find for free. And then you can like see your topics. I think it helps to buy some books to learn the candlestick patterns, charts. I mean, that's something where I would invest money on and buy some books. But there are a lot of things readily available for everyone who's interested.
Is there a reasonable time frame you would tell someone to give themselves if they did have a full-time job or they were a stay-at-home parent?
I'd say, I don't know, I'd say at least a year. I think it's a little bit hard to judge because I think it depends on how much time you put in. As I said, I dived in fully. So for me, it might have been a little bit shorter, the learning curve, than for other people who don't have that much time. But yeah, probably a year, I would say. I think it takes a very long time. And even if you study everything, I think nobody is really equipped to handle their emotions until they trade with real money. So you might think you have everything under control, but I think when you have the real money dwindling down and you see red, the trading psychology, I think it's easy to understand when you just read a book. And it's like my husband, for example, he's like with me on this journey. He doesn't trade. For him, it's like, well, it makes perfect sense to me. But then when you're in the situation where you really have to manage your trade and follow your plan, it's quite different. So expect some pushback. I think it's a rocky journey. It's a wonderful journey, but I don't think it's very linear. I think there are a lot of ups and downs in the process. And I would suggest be aware of that.
Before we start to wrap this up, I wanted to know, if you could start over, what would you tell yourself?
I would give myself more time. I'm very impatient. I'm also very stubborn. And I think if I could do it again, I would start with a smaller account. I just wanted to make it work so bad that I really wanted to trade with real money, and I wanted to achieve success fast. And
would you have done paper then instead?
No, never paper. No, for me, I need the emotions. I need to learn how to handle the emotions. So paper trading for me, it's not a good option, but just smaller amounts.
Yep. You went in pretty big right after that.
I wouldn't say pretty big,
Yeah.
but it hurt when I lost. It wasn't $10 when I
Gotcha.
lost. Let's put it like that.
Yep, understand.
And again, I think people at my age or people who had like corporate careers, they can put more money into trading. And as I said before, that's not always a good thing. So I think start slow.
Start
and
slow.
Expect some time to get used to it.
Well, look, Sandra, I know people are going to have a lot of questions and they're going to want to learn more about you. So could you tell them where they can learn more information about yourself?
Sure, I try to limit social media, but I'm, for example, in your chat room, and yeah, my name is Sandra Pandit Cook, and my Discord name is Sandra, P as my middle initial, Cook.
Well, thank you so much, Sandra, for being here. And everyone else, you need to definitely share this with other friends, especially if they're working a full-time job, so they can understand that this is something they can do on the side to help them grow and help them get better. And again, thanks for watching.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.